Yeah, my daily thing that I have to remind myself of is chill. And so as far as like having more patience or just like slowing down, like I'm very like snappy on like a lot of things, and not so much like in anger, depending on how the students are acting and how long they've been acting that way. But like even just needing to get this test done, that test done, that test done, and or like whenever I'm trying to train somebody on something or talk about something, I'm very like talk, quick. Yeah. I'm like, just slow down. Just chill. Chill. In all areas of life, just chill. Yeah. So
I got to remind myself to say no.
Yeah.
Because I know you've worked in church for a while. I work here, and sometimes like people will ask me to do stuff that is like outside of the church, or people who come here and they're like, hey, can you do this video thing for me? Or, hey, can you help me hook up my cable or stuff like that? And I'm like, most of the time I'm like, yeah, sure, dude, I'll help you, especially with something quick and I can do it. But if it's like a labor intensive thing, I got to learn to say no.
Yeah. Now, my wife struggles with that, and she's working on that. I am better at that. Just, I don't know if, I just don't care enough about people as you guys do.
Wow.
But no, I'm very comfortable saying no. Craig Rochelle says the more you say no to, the bigger things you can say yes to.
Yeah.
Or the more things you say no to, the bigger things you can say yes to. And so that's kind of been my thing. And I was
Lead Like It Matters. I think I read that.
I'm not. It was from a leadership podcast, so he definitely could have tied in something from a book.
Yeah.
But I recognized that early on, and I was warned early on whenever I wanted to get into ministry, especially in terms of family time.
Right.
And they're like, family comes first. Don't, because there's a lot of people have a lot of church hurt, especially people who have worked at churches. And so I try to get a balance of people as far as like guidance and things like that. But unanimously across the board, those who still worked at a church, those who didn't, those who loved working at a church, those who hated it, everyone said the same thing, like protect your family time. And so family's the first ministry. If I'm not shepherding my family, I'm not qualified to be in the position I'm in.
Yeah.
And so that's a requirement given in Titus, I think. Yeah. Titus.
And I know you take your family time seriously, because I'll text you to do stuff and you're just like, nope, family time.
Yep. Daytime, whatever it might be.
Daytime, family time. Because I have a lot more free time than you, because single and no children.
Sure.
But it's that dynamic.
Do you want some of mine?
No, you're good. You're good. I can barely take care of myself, man.
Yeah.
But that's,
you got cats.
I do. I have 2 cats. But they don't take any kind of upkeep.
Yeah, they take care of themselves. Yeah.
I feed them once a day.
Yeah.
But that is like, you do protect your family time, and I do. You got to have that kind of family time. You got to have you time. You got to have family time, God time. There's a time for everything, and you've got to protect that stuff, because it's all encompassing of keeping you sane. It really is.
And a lot of the times you don't realize how bad it's gotten until like it's too late, basically, to where you're like mental breakdown.
Yeah.
And so I am very into preventative measures.
Yes.
Like my wife is great. I love my wife. But she'll just out of having a servant's heart and stuff, she'll push herself to the limits and then like have a migraine or something. Like she won't take headache medicine early enough, and so she'll have a migraine later. And it's kind of the same concept of like,
just drink water.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, but it's the same like concept of you work and you work and you work and you work and you're like, oh man, I'm getting tired. I'm gonna keep on working, and then it's like Easter comes around the corner. Well, I can't stop working because Easter's important. And then it's like, oh, camps are around the corner. Oh, Christmas is around the corner. And it's like if you don't plan times for rest, you won't find it.
Yeah.
And it's the same way with like your devotional time. You don't find time for God, you make time for God.
Yeah.
And
it's not going to fall out of the sky, and you're not going to be like, oops, my calendar opened up.
Yeah.
Calendars rarely open up.
Right.
You know what they do get more of?
Full. Yeah. And so it's definitely, and then it also plays into like when you're tired, you feel like you don't perform as well, and then you get imposter syndrome, like all this other stuff. And all of that, like, yeah, I've experienced, but fortunately I've had a lot of good like mentors in my life that anything that I say that seems wise or catchy or whatever, it's just come from somebody else telling it to me.
Yep.
And so I just try to soak in all the good stuff and then teach others what I've learned, because I've had the opportunity, that's the word I'm looking for, of having the mentors that I have.
You say imposter syndrome. Mm-hmm. Walk me through that.
Sure. Yeah. am I called to be a pastor? Am I qualified to be a pastor? Do I really know enough about the Bible to be a pastor? Am I wise enough, experienced enough to be in charge of leading parents, or leading not just parents, but students and their families? Am I really seeing results? Am I being effective? Am I? And really, it's the same thing with like social anxiety. It's all focused on me. Yep. It's all self-centeredness. And what it's doing is it bases my value and my worth off my abilities when God's the one who's called me. Mm-hmm. And so Paul talks about like how, like, look, the people that are assessing me in the church or whatever, they're not the ones who called me to this. God called me to this. And so whenever I'm doubting, and this is going to sound cocky, but I believe everyone understands, whenever I'm doubting how good of a pastor I am or how qualified I am, really I'm doubting God and his ability to recognize giftings and abilities. And so I'm not just doubting myself. Mm-hmm. I'm doubting God who made me the way I am. Not to say that I don't have flaws that I can't work on. Right, but that's right. Yeah.
Well, I got a list.
Yeah, I know.
You know.
No, and so like I could list a bunch, and so but ultimately it's like, you know, God, you called me to this, so I'm going to trust you. Mm-hmm. No matter how hard this feels, no matter how unqualified I am, I just know the great thing is I'm not the one bringing people to Jesus. I'm the one just presenting Jesus. The Holy Spirit's the one setting up the tea. You know, and that's what my senior pastor Bob Poley talked about, not today but last week, about God's the one who sets up the tee. The Holy Spirit's the one who sets up the tee. Mm-hmm. We're just responsible for taking a swing. Yeah. And so that's that.
Yeah, I used to kind of be afraid to do things.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, it's not gonna be good enough.
Anything new is intimidating, especially whenever you're the one driving it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like this whole podcast, like I wanted to do this day one. Mm-hmm. Like, it was 2023, January is when I took this position. Yeah. Officially. And like, I was 100% adamant of like, I had all the stuff in the Amazon list and I'm like, I got all this stuff set up and I want to buy this and do that. Mm-hmm. And I was like, day one, I want to do this. And I kept thinking, I was like, no, it's not ready. It's not this. It's not that. It's never going to be where I wanted it to be. Mm-hmm. I just had to do it. Yeah. But you have that little voice that's just like, well, it's not good enough. You're not good enough. You don't know enough. You can't do this. You can't sit here and have a conversation like you have been for the past 30 years you've been alive.
Right. Yep. It's social anxiety. Yeah. Really. That's all it is social anxiety.
And it just keeps getting in the way and just getting in between you and what you know you have to do. Because like, mm-hmm. I knew that like, just for instance, this podcast.
What you get to do. Yeah. I'm a big stickler about that I don't have to do anything. I get to do it, you know. Yeah. And it's cheesy, but it helps me stay in the right mindset. So.
Right. You're right. And it's what that I'm supposed to put this out. Like, I know that like in my heart, this has been birthed in me mm-hmm. to do this. And now it's at this point to where I don't care. Let's try it. Yeah. Whatever it is. Like if we're going to do something new, staff brings me stuff all the time. Like the youth staff, and they're like, hey, we want to try this. Go for it. Yeah. Let's do it.
Yeah. You know? Pastor Bob says, I don't know if he got it from somewhere else, so maybe a Wayne Gretzky, Michael Scott type thing. But he says a B+ plan that's executed beats an A+ plan that never happens. Yes. And so that's like, okay, cool. And so he encourages me like, hey, take swings. Mm-hmm. If you miss, you miss, and we'll learn from it. Yeah. And if it's really big, he's got my back, you know, that type of thing. And so that's encouraging, having that type of leadership above me.
You do get afraid of that big, like,
am I going to blow up the youth group?
Like, did I burn this down?
Yeah. There's been plenty of times where like I make a mistake and I have to own up to it, and parents are a little peeved, but most of the time, you know, those kids stick around or whatever, and God's got grace, and I just ask parents to too. Yeah. So
I know intention only gets you so far. Mm-hmm. Like my intention always is for the betterment of the kids. Right. Is for that they grow closer to Jesus. Mm-hmm. That's always my intention. Does it always work out that way and everything works out perfectly on paper? Yeah. No. Yeah. Do I have to pay to replace things or like, you know, come up with a new plan or scrap everything entirely most of the
Cause
time.
the church to raise their insurance policy.
Yeah, stuff like that. I won't. There is a church van that we used to have here. It was a maroon church van, which I actually ended up buying from the church when they sold it.
Oh yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, and then I gave it to my dad for his flooring business he was doing, and then he wrecked it like a month later.
That's how it happens,
but
man.
It is what it is. I remember I was backing up one time. I was backing the van up under the awning, and I had the door open, and it hit the guardrail and just T-boned, out, and it just put a big dent in it. And I remember Troy Brody, he was standing there just looking at it. He's like, "Nice job, Biscuit."
And now you have a cat named Biscuits.
I do.
Yeah.
I was just like, "I'm sorry, man." He's like, "Don't worry about it. Just see if it closes."
Yeah.
It closed. I was like, "Cool, don't tell Pastor." He's like, "I'm telling him immediately."
Yeah.
But I had to own up. That's my own little mistake.
I'm glad you're that type of person that they can say that, like Troy could say that and you just kind of like took it.
Yeah.
There's definitely some people that can't laugh at themselves.
Oh yeah.
And then also like there's times where embarrassing moments happen and I try to like not make a big deal out of it.
Yeah.
But then like if a student does it in front of other students and they start like saying something, like trying to change topics in a subtle way without saying like, hey, let's not talk about it because it's really embarrassing for this person. Like I try to do it subtly, but man, students do not get like social cues.
They don't.
And it's like, oh, someone had a flaw. Let me tear into that flaw.
Right.
And so,
let me talk about it at detail in length.
right.
You know?
And then so that's one of the fun things about youth ministry is like the empathy. Going back to empathy of like, oh, I've done embarrassing stuff and I would hate.
Some people take life too seriously, and life's too fun to take seriously.
Yeah.
It really is. Like, and it helps, like, too, if I do something embarrassing, I'll laugh along with it. And I'm like, well, we could,
I'll call it out.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I put a dent in the van. I'm like, oh, we can buff that out. Like, no problem. Just, right there. It's like, I just clean it off.
Right.
We're fine. Or just, I'll make fun of myself to kind of diffuse that, like, pain that's coming in, which I know isn't exactly healthy. But it's better than just like feeling that embarrassment and taking it seriously.
I would rather.
Yeah.
Again, it's dealing with it now compared to later type deal, and so
I would rather just laugh.
Yeah.
And just like I messed up,
dude. So we got Lincoln a punching bag type thing, like one of those like blow up ones, you know.
Yeah.
And you fill it up with water on the bottom and stuff, and so he was punching it. And he wanted me to punch it. I'm like, okay, yeah, I'll show my kid how to punch, as much as I know how to punch.
Right.
And so I'm on my knees because, like, this thing's small. And I punch it, and, like, it flies back. And he's like, whoa. And I'm like, yeah. And then, like, it's really great. And so bring it back to the spot it was. And he wanted me to punch it again. And so I punch it again, but I swung a little bit too far. And I'm in my parents' kitchen. And they have a stainless steel dryer or dishwasher.
No.
And I catch it with my pinky knuckle.
Oh.
And immediately I know there's a dent. Immediately. And so I just go.
I'm surprised you put a dent in it.
My dad, my dad was in his bedroom. So I just knock on the bed or the door. I'm like, hey, two things. One, do you want pizza tonight? And then he's like, yeah, get me this. I'm like, cool. Second thing, I probably owe you money for the dishwasher. And he's like, what? And I'm like, told him the story and stuff. And he's pretty, he takes care of his stuff, very, very much so. And so he wasn't necessarily happy about it, but he thanked me afterwards for like being honest about it and things. And so integrity is one of my like key things. It's that respect and discipline and faith type deal.
Yeah.
It was funny. I went to Sam's to get my tires replaced, to get new tires. And so I talked to someone on like Thursday to schedule the appointment on Friday. Then I dropped off the car on Friday, talked to somebody else. Then Friday afternoon when I picked up the car, talked to somebody else. Each time I had my card out, every single time. Nobody asked me for my card. I never got charged.
Really?
And so I ended up calling Sam's Club. I'm like, hey, I think I might have forgot, whatever, trying to explain the situation. Can you see if my card's been charged? And so they end up checking. They're like, yeah, can you come up at your earliest convenience? I'm like, yeah, man, I got you. And they're like, can you tell me who checked you in or whatever? Because that's the person who was supposed to do it. And I'm like, oh, do I tell? But I'm already this far in. And so I described the person and whatnot. So sorry, guy, if you end up finding this and you got fired because of it. But
Yeah.
but anyway, paid it and
Because
stuff.
you had to be honest.
Yeah, and it's like it's like, you know, the things that maybe are tough for me to do, I want to make sure that I set the example for my kids to do or my students to do.
Yep.
And so like I want to live beyond reproach. Not that I do everything perfectly, but I'm honest about all my issues
Yeah.
so that no one can like be guessing like, oh, does Pastor Josh struggle with that? Like, yeah, I'm honest. I struggle with this.
Yeah.
But I also know, like, you can believe me whenever I say I don't struggle with this, like, and that type of thing. And so,
Because you, it's not so much the words you say, and you can craft the best sermon in the world, but if you aren't living that,
right.
like the
Practice
kids,
what you preach.
the people,
Yeah.
they ain't gonna respond to it. So it's you have to be careful in how you live. Not that I'm out there living an outlandish life,
Sure.
but
We're not prosperity gospel people.
God wants me to have a $10 million jet.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
No, he does not. But I have to live, like you said, above reproach. I have to live to not to my standard, but to the standard that God has set.
Right.
And
As much as we can.
As much as we can.
Right.
And that's my focus. That's my bar. That's my everything. I'm not going to live by your standard of what you think is right and wrong or anybody else. I'm going to live by what I see from God.
Yeah,
what
and
He
I'm
has
not
set for
expecting
us.
others to follow my standard either.
Right.
That's one thing that I really struggled with in youth ministry was respect has always been huge to me.
Yeah.
Like, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, that type of thing. And I can be very militaristic, like when it comes to camps, as far as like, hey,
Yes.
we follow the camp rules, like we respect the leaders, like whatever they say goes type
Yep.
deal. And like I will help you through this. I will help you try to understand why this rule is that way. But we don't talk back to like camp leaders and stuff like that.
Correct.
And so like I'm always early to everything and all of that. And so a lot of that's like respect, but that's how I was raised. That's not how some of the students are raised as much as I wish.
Yeah.
And so that's something that a hurdle I had to get over personally. And my, again, Pastor Bob told me, he's like, look, they don't care about the things you care about. And if they should care about that, our job is to teach them why, not control them. Our job is to guide them, not control them.
Yeah.
And so that was probably one of my biggest hurdles that I think I still am struggling with in terms of like reacting to things, is getting frustrated whenever they blatantly lie to one of my leaders or disrespect one of my leaders and things like that. I'm like, you don't do that.
It's very different.
Yeah.
Because I'm very relaxed with the kids. They'll call me sir, and I'm like, my name's Kevin.
Yeah.
Like, you just, Kevin.
Yeah.
Kevin is good. Kevin's great. Kev, Big Kev, Biscuit.
Pastor Kev.
Yeah, no. PK.
PK, yeah.
Kevin is fine.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to sir me. But when they disrespect my leaders, I'm very different.
Dude, when it comes to like my wife, like I blew up on a kid once.
Yeah.
Like, cause he was doing it in a joking way. And so this is more a reflection of my poor character in the moment. But he asked Bree if she brushed her teeth, as in like she has bad breath.
Oh.
And like I'm like, you don't say that to my wife, like all that stuff. And like, you know, people might be like, yeah, you're supposed to defend your wife. And it's like, but I made it more of an issue for her than the student did.
Yeah.
And like I made it more embarrassing for her than the student did, and like all that stuff. And so she had to talk to me about it afterwards and like all of that. And so I'm realizing that like I just need to chill in the moment.
Yeah.
And have a conversation once the initial rage has
Yes.
died down.
Yeah.
And it is important how we talk about people, but me reacting in that way does not display what I want to teach.
Yeah.
And so
9 times out of 10, the knee-jerk reaction is the wrong reaction.
Right.
And it's the one you have to like really just kind of
that's
hold
why
yourself on.
we have to renew our mind. If I told the leader this, I heard this the other day, but if the gospel isn't challenging you, you're listening to the wrong gospel.
Yeah.
Like, and so no matter how good you get,
There's always a facet of your life, like, because when one thing goes up, like, oh, I'm getting better at this. Maybe one thing is declining and you're not getting good at this. Like, we took the kids to an overnight lock-in. And one of the things I was like, before you get out of this van, before we go into there, if a leader from another church has to come up to me and tell me that you guys are doing something wrong, we're going to have a conversation.
Yep.
And it's like, I got very kind of almost militaristically mad of like,
even the thought of it.
I better not have another church leader come up, because there was multiple churches at this lock-in. Come to me and tell me that you are acting up, or you're doing this, or you're doing that. You will feel my wrath.
Yeah.
And you will go home.
Yeah. And so with that, because I'm the same way, I can be the same way, but what I'm learning is that shows in us a fear of embarrassment.
Yeah.
And that the kids are a potential embarrassment to us.
Yeah.
And so, like, I've had students whose parents treat them that way, and then I realize, like, whenever I say those type of, like, not to call you out, but like I've said those things plenty of times. It's like, man, I'm treating them the same way that their parent is. Yeah. And like they just feel like they're embarrassment.
Well, because that's how, and it's something I'm trying to dig out of my own.
It's brain, a balance.
It's because that's how I was treated as a kid. It was just like, I was fine at home. Do whatever you want, but like you act up while we're over at somebody's house.
You got to put on a show for. You got to put on a face.
It's very much that, but it also is like I want them to respect the place and the leaders. So there's a better way for me to tell them that than the like I'm just gonna snap on you and just carpet bomb your life if you disrupt this.
Yeah, you know? one way that I've heard it say, and I don't know if it actually impacts how students act or not. I think it really just depends on the student. Yeah. But like you are representatives, you are ambassadors of Christ, you are representatives of the church. And so if someone were to be looking for a church or even just open to the idea of Jesus, we want to make sure that we are representing that well and that we entice them further. Yeah. Like just by our actions and how much we love people. And so, I probably need to start saying that type of stuff more. So
I've got to come up with a better way of like talking to these kids and not just like getting to that moment. Because like I said, most of the time, 90% of the time, I'm relaxed and let's have fun. But when it comes to like, these are the hard lines, like don't disrespect my staff, don't act up while we're outside of here. You want to act up at the cave? I'll probably join you. Yeah. That's just how relaxed you are. But like, you're right. It is that embarrassment of like, you don't want to feel that. You don't want to, Well,
and then like and the thing is like all youth pastors know that you can't control the kids.
You can't.
And like, if you're like, I would want you to let me know if one of my students were doing that or whatever, but also I know that you would understand. Yes. That's just youth ministry.
And so, I'm not going to judge you because your kid acted up because I know exactly how kids are because I got 30 of them back there.
Right. But whenever you're thinking about it, it's like, oh, this pressure put on me and it's a reflection of my pastoring. It's a reflection of my leadership. And again, it's all about me. Yeah. That's whenever I get in trouble is when I'm thinking all about myself, which unfortunately is a lot more than I should.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I'm not saying like this is stuff you should be doing. Like, obviously there are lines and there's ways to handle it.
Yeah. Because you don't want a gentle parent either.
Yeah. Well, some kids, there's one kid that I have that gentle parenting works. It really works for him. It's just he acts up, and then I'm just like, "Hey, man, can you just like kind of sit still and just kind of be here for a second? He's like, "Yeah, sorry, Kevin. Yeah, I'll just kind of do that."
Well, that's being loving, but like so. Anyway,
when you say gentle parenting, what do you?
So like,
what are you meaning?
So I heard
catch
it say,
a bubble. Like,
yeah, those are funny. No, we do that with our elementary kids.
Yeah, I did that this past Wednesday with the middle schoolers.
But Bree does that with me too sometimes. Yeah. So, but well,
you are in elementary.
I do think a lot of it is like distracting from dealing with the problem, and so if they're acting up, here's a toy. Like if they're and so like I get. Trust me, I get like
being an iPad kid.
Yeah, if a kid is autistic on the spectrum, if they got some type of attention thing, like I definitely get depending on what's going on in the kid's head. Yeah, there's different ways of handling it, but for the most part, like just distracting them from the behavior isn't teaching them how to behave well. Yeah, and again at church, our goal isn't behave. It's not what. How is it said? It's about heart transformation, not behavior modification. Yeah. But at the same time, we need to create an atmosphere of safety and to where students feel comfortable engaging in their relationship with Jesus and worship and all of that.
Because there's some kids like you do have to be gentle with them, and because they're kind of fragile. Yeah. And
which Jesus says he is gentle and kind. Yes. Like he's compassionate of heart. He's humble of heart, gentle and kind.
And which I know it may not sound like it, but I am very gentle with these kids. Yeah. There's other kids though that I have to be more stern, and I have to recognize every kid needs something different.
Yeah.
No one, two kids are the same. They each need something different. They each have different names, different likes and interests and dislikes and all this stuff. So it's up to me to kind of have that relationship, that friendship, and just go, this kid I can be gentle with. This kid needs a stern, structure.
And then have grace for yourself when you handle it in the wrong way and treat
Exactly.
one kid in a way that you shouldn't treat them and all that stuff.
Forgive yourself for making mistakes.
Right.
My biggest mistake right now is forgetting a kid's name. And I feel like they're like, do you know my name? And I'm like, man, I couldn't tell you.
Have I told you my tip?
No.
Okay, so
is it like singing a song with their name in it?
No. Although you could do like Kevin, Bevin, or whatever, you know. My thing is, and I haven't actually had to do this in a while, thankfully. So you can always like take notes and stuff like that in your phone and take a picture of them or whatever.
Yeah.
But for students, what I do is I ask them like their favorite candy bar or their favorite like food or whatever.
Yeah.
And then that's their nickname until I know their name.
Oh,
and most of the time, I don't even have the chance to call them that nickname before I remember their name. And so like if their favorite candy bar is Butterfingers, like obviously that could be an insult, but
hey, Butterfinger.
Based on that question, they know, okay, this is the nickname they gave me, not just them insulting me. Right. So it's like, hey, it's up, Butterfingers. And but most of the time before I even get to that point, just by remembering their favorite candies, Butterfingers, I also remember their name.
Yeah.
So
what's been helping me is I kind of man the sign-in desk where they come in and they sign in. And then we have these cards here that sit on my desk every week. And so if they're new, I get their card and I always read over it.
We got Connect cards. Yeah,
Connect cards, things like that. I'll look at like who's there and like I can see them sign in and I'm like, what's your name? And I try to repeat it back to them and stuff. What really helps me is taking their name to a form of media. So like music, movies, books, something like that.
Association.
It's an association. So if just, it's like this one kid, her name was Dahlia. And I was like, oh, the Black Dahlia murders. Like, I'd never seen it.
Yeah.
I've never seen it.
Of course. I'm sure that's great to hear. Like, when you think of me, you think of murders.
Yeah, but like, that's what I kind of, in my own head, I'm just like, okay, I'll remember her name because it's a very unique name, but it's also, I've associated it with something now.
Yeah.
So, like, I have this kind of, I've made a core memory.
Yeah, my son, Lincoln Logs.
Yeah, Lincoln Logs. Yeah. Or Judah Bell.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Judo
belt.
Judo belt.
I forgot about that one. So
a lot of stuff. All my friends have.
Yeah.
All my friends have kids, and they all have weird names. They do, except for one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just Max.
Max. Yeah. Yeah, we've got a few interesting. It was really weird. About when Lincoln was probably one, a student started showing up, and his name was Lincoln.
Really.
And so it was like, sometimes whenever we're playing knockout or whatever, be like, Lincoln, pass me the ball or whatever. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to be saying this in like 12 years or whatever.
Does it hit you? Does it hit you that you're going to be a dad playing catch with his son?
Dude, like, I mean, I'm looking forward to it, and we already kind of play catch as much as a toddler can,
Right.
But it really just like, it hits you in waves. Is it
going to hit you like Field of Dreams, like have a catch, Dad?
I haven't seen it.
You haven't?
I haven't. I reference it.
Have a catch, Dad?
Build it and they will come, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, but no, I haven't seen that. But there's definitely movies or stories or songs that I listen to now, and it's like, oh, man, from the perspective of a dad, it, like, changes
Cats
things.
in the Cradle and the Silver Spoon.
Right. I don't think I've actually ever listened to that song all the way through.
It's all about a dad not having time for his son and then his son growing up not having time for his dad. That's the gist of that song.
That's sad.
It is very sad.
So I heard this in terms of parenting. I'm trying to remember the exact phrase, but basically, the true test of parenthood is your relationship with them after they are like as an adult.
Yeah.
And so like if you have a relationship with them as an adult, you did pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I know a big thing right now with people hitting 18, 21. The kids becoming adults is them going no contact with parents. That's a big thing I've been seeing.
I should try that. I live with my parents. I just sold my house, so yeah.
I try to just lock the door. I'm going no contact.
Yeah.
But like that's a big thing I've been seeing is just like my parents were this, and this, and I know that everybody's situation is different, but you'll hear that like, oh, that's not how it happened, that a parent will say. And I get it because like parents are
two
parents.
perspectives to everything.
Yeah.
Two sides of the
Parents
story.
are parents for the first time when they become parents. You know, they weren't that before.
Yeah.
So it's like they're raising kids for the first time. And if you're an oldest kid, sorry, like,
Yeah.
you get the experimental stuff and like you get all the rules. And if you're the baby, you get no rules. That's usually how it happens.
Yeah.
But there are some things like parents will be like, oh, that never happened, like abuse or things like that. Or you remember it differently, like gaslighting.
It wasn't that bad.
It wasn't that bad. And then just adults are like, all right, no contact. We're just going to not talk to them. We're not going to go to any family stuff. We're not going to, they're just.
Which they have every right to do.
Really? That's your opinion?
I do. So if in case of abuse,
Yeah.
like especially if they continue abuse, I would say yeah. Now you should try to. So Scripture does talk about when you're at the altar and you have a grievance against someone.
Yeah.
To go back, leave your gift at the altar, go back, settle that grievance, and then come back to the altar and present your gift.
Yeah.
You know. And so I do believe that God is a God of forgiveness, a God of peace, a God of unity.
Yeah.
And so you should make every attempt to restore unity and to express forgiveness, depending on which side you're on, that type of deal. But if the person does not want to grow in their relationship with you or does not want to move in that path, then ultimately you're going in two different directions.
Right.
And so you don't want to. We talked about handling rejection a few Wednesdays ago. And so if you attach yourself to someone going the opposite direction, you'll never end up where you need to be or where you're meant to be.
Right.
And so, like, yeah, you should forgive that person, but it doesn't mean you have to have them in your life.
Yeah.
So
no person is entitled to your existence. And forgiveness is a big thing because, like, people can wrong you. People can do bad things, especially all growing up, like family, definitely, because they're, with you all the time.
Right.
And they're not all perfect. But the forgiveness is for yourself as much as it is for them.
Yeah.
Like, you have to heal.
Yeah.
And if you carry around this, like, grievance and just this hate, it will boil into hate. And it affects how you live. I understand going no contact. I've gone no contact with a few people in life just because,
me included. No,
right. Well, it's just friends that just treated me bad.
Yeah.
And they just they walked all over me. They only wanted to take. They didn't want to give. There was no friendship there. There was, we can treat this guy however we want to.
Yeah.
And like, eventually you're just like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I'm done.
I don't want to be your punching bag.
Yeah. And if you're not, and if you don't understand where I'm coming from, have a good life.
Yeah. It's not my job to understand it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, and if you won't treat me with that mutual respect, like that we are equals, if you're going to treat me lesser, I'm going to spend less time with you.
Yeah.
That's just how it goes.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with that. I think there is if you fester that hate. You grow that hate and you don't kind of get this kind of resolution.
If I can still serve the person, then I think that's a good sign.
Yeah.
That, like, I don't need to be their crutch. I don't need to be their life support system.
Yep.
But if I can still serve them, like if they were somebody, if they started coming to the church and they were having some issues or whatever, and like I could greet them at the door or I could cut their grass for them. Like if I feel like I could do that, then that's probably, I'm in a pretty good spot as far as forgiveness and not harboring things. Yeah. But if even the thought of the person brings up anger and brings up hate, or tension or frustration or whatever, I've probably got some stuff to work on my end. Yeah. And so regardless of how dumb the person may be or, that type of thing, it's like that.
There's only so much
people are broken. People are messed up. I'm broken. I'm messed up. I have flaws. And so, I just need to love them as Jesus loves them and go from there.
No, I like that. So, hey, man, I appreciate you coming by today and having a nice little conversation
Absolutely.
with us. Is there anything you want to say in closing?
Don't do drugs, stay in school, brush your teeth.
Awesome.
I had a speaker come up one time whenever I was a youth leader, and he was supposed to give a big speech, and that's all he said and walked off stage, but I still remember it. Yeah. So there's that.
I mean, yeah, it's memorable.
Yeah. So, but no, really just like we said, to bring it back to what we said in the beginning, if you're listening to this and not serving on a team at your church, serve on a team at your church. Really get plugged in, engage. There's no better time than now. So,
yeah. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, again, I thank you for coming by. Thank you for, your conversation. I really do appreciate you as a friend.
Yeah.
And fellow.
Yeah, we had a real conversation. It didn't get too wacky.
It didn't.
So,
like we stayed on point. We had a like serious conversation.
I did that as a favor to you because I know this is your job. So
I appreciate that because we can get a little off topic. But I want to thank you for coming in. I want to thank you out there for listening. So be safe, don't die, and don't kill anybody.
Yeah, and brush your teeth, stay in school.
Yeah, that.